Now, last night we took up 3 words: as, is, am. And if you catch this, it will reorganize your whole life. Now, mark this well, because this is going to be a very, very important point in your life if you catch it. There is not God and you. There is God expressed as you. As, is, am. Do you see that? Not God somewhere and you somewhere else trying to get together. Not God up there and man down here trying to climb. God as you. God is, I am. That triad is not a slogan. It is the end of the belief that you live outside of God. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. I am not giving you a formula to chant before breakfast. This is not positive thinking. It is not self-hypnosis. It is not trying to convince the human mind that things are rosy. It is recognition. Recognition of what is spiritually, eternally true before a thought arises and after the last thought subsides. God is infinite being. Therefore, the only way you can use the word God with integrity is as all, as only, as is. And if God is all, where would there be room for a second self? Where would there be room for a me alongside God? There is not God and you. There is God being God as your very identity. Therefore, as tells you of expression, is tells you of presence, and am names your true I. Do you see that? But, and here comes that terrible, terrible word, but. What about my pain? What about my past? What about the news? That but is the voice of the human sense of self, the old I, me, mine, that was manufactured on the premise of separation. The human mind is built on borders, on comparisons, on a private life apart from God. And these 3 words strike at its root. Of course it resists. Of course it argues. Of course it says, yes, 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 God, but me. Now I tell you, that is the very hypnotism we are here to break. We are not here to polish up the old sense of self. We are here to awaken to the self that already is, the I that is I am. A class is a sacred, sacred, sacred undertaking. If you do not settle this point, you will go round and round the wheel, praying to a distant deity to come fix a distant problem in a separate person. If you settle it, you will have the master key for every claim that parades before you. Sin is the suggestion, I am separate. Disease is the suggestion, I live in a body apart from life. Lack is the suggestion, supply is outside me. Fear is the suggestion, power is two. One claim, many costumes. One hypnotic premise, many stories. Therefore, one key. As, is, am. So let us begin rightly. We do not try to make God do. God is. We do not try to become spiritual. I am. We do not live next to life. Life lives as us. Rest in that. Breathe in that. Let the words take you from the argument into the awareness. As, is, am. And in that quiet, the old but loses its authority, and peace, not a future peace, not a negotiated peace, peace that is, announces itself. Do you see that? Now, let us make this very plain with something you can hold in your hand. Take a tumbler. You do not have glass and a tumbler. You have glass as a tumbler. The substance is glass. The form is tumbler. But it is one thing appearing as that function. Do you see that? If you smash the form, you do not destroy glass as substance. You only disturb that particular shape. The essence remains what it is, glass. Or take your dining table. You do not have mahogany and a table. You have mahogany as a table. The mahogany is the substance. Table is the way it presents. Not two things. One substance. One life. One reality, seen as a certain usefulness. Do you follow that? Now carry that from kitchen and parlor to the truth of being. If God is infinite being, mark that word, infinite. Where would there be room for something besides God? Where would a second substance come from? From what warehouse of existence could you import anything to stand next to infinity? There is no such warehouse. Infinity crowds out a second. Therefore, all that truly is God in expression. Not God and world. God as world, understood spiritually. Not God and man. God as individual being. Not God and life. God as life. As is. Am. As is and am. Let that begin to beat within you like a pulse. Don't ever misunderstand what I am saying. I am not saying human beings become God by merit or by ritual. I am saying the only being there is God being God, and that what you have called me is the form, the expression in which that being presents. As a tumbler presents glass, your individuality presents God. As expression, is presence, am, identity. All that God is, I am, not by borrowing, not by pleading, but by nature. God's life as your life. God's intelligence as your intelligence. God's being as your being. Do you see that? If you do not see that, you will spend the rest of your days trying to use God to patch a separated self, praying to make the tumbler safe while doubting the glass. And it will always disappoint you, because you will be working at the form level as if it were a self-existent thing, as if the table could stand without mahogany or the tumbler could sip without glass. You will say, heal me, fix me, prosper me. And you will have made two, God over here, a needy creature over there. That is the birthplace of every but. But my body, but my mind, but my bank book. That is the hypnotism. All right, let us reverse it. Begin with substance, and then let form be what it is. Presentation, not separation. God is. Therefore, what you call your life is God's life showing forth. God is. Therefore, what you call intelligence is the one mind expressing as your discernment. God is. Therefore, what you call being is the I that is I am. As, is, am. Say it not as a formula, but as recognition. Sit with it until you feel the weight of it in your bones. As, is, am. As is an am. And as this becomes not merely heard, but felt, the compulsion to manage, to defend, to fix the form relaxes. You rest in the substance and the form aligns. Is that clear? Do you see that? Now then, follow the logic and don't let your thoughts slip off the track. If God is infinite, God is the only presence. Therefore, there is not a presence beside God. If God is infinite, God is the only power. Therefore, there is not a power opposite God. If God is infinite, God is the only law. Therefore, there is not a law contrary to God. Do you see that? Where would a second presence stand in infinity? On what ground could a second law be built when the ground itself is God? There could be none, and there is none. This is not opinion, it is necessity. Infinity cannot share. Oneness cannot divide. Therefore, all that truly is God being God. God as being, God as life, God as mind, God as law. As, is, am. From this there is no appeal. But, and here comes that terrible, terrible word, but pain, but war, but injustice, but disease. Now how can you say it isn't real? Don't ever misunderstand what I am saying. I am not brushing human tears aside with a glib slogan. In the realm of human sense, suffering is felt, and it can wring the heart. It registers as sensation. It appears as pictures. It organizes itself as events on the evening news. Real as experience in human consciousness? Yes. Real as God-ordained being? No. It has no principle in God, no divine sanction, no law to maintain it, no presence to perpetuate it. It is not a second power. It is a suggestion of a second power, an appearance claiming authority where there is only the is of God. Do you follow that? Mark the difference because it will save you years. We are not denying that people suffer. We are denying that suffering has spiritual authority. We are denying that it has a cause in God, a law in God, a life in God. If God is life, what law of death could God institute? If God is love, what legislation of hatred could God enact? If God is mind, what principle of insanity could God devise? If God is substance, what principle of lack could God withhold? There is no such principle. There is no such law. There is no such cause. Therefore, the entire edifice of discord rests on a premise that does not exist in God. It exists as a picture in the human sense, a hypnosis of separation, and it continues only so long as it is granted law in your belief. Is that right? Do you see that? All right. Then notice the practical consequence. If there is not a second power, you cannot fight error. To fight it is to credit it. To organize a campaign against it is to confess it has substance and law. In the infinite way, you have one power, and you never use it. You rest in it. You bear witness to it. You consent to its isness until the suggestion of a second power loses your faith, and with your faith, its seeming force. The question is not, how do I overcome evil? The question is, how do I see through an appearance that has no law? And this is where our discipline begins. Standing so firmly in as, in eyes, in am, that the clamoring picture cannot enlist us as its attorney. In a moment, we shall look at the nature of that picture, how it seems to be what it is not. But for now, hold this. Because God is all, error can only be appearance, never law, never power, never presence. Rest there. Stay there. Let that be the rock under your feet. And in that resting, peace announces itself. All right, now let us look at the picture itself, so that you are never again fooled by its bravado. Stand by a railroad track and look down the line. The rails seem to meet. You could swear there is a point out there where steel kisses steel. But you walk toward it and it backs away. You ride a mile and it is still a mile ahead. Do you see that? There is no law of nature bringing rails together. There is only a picture to the eye. Or stand on the seashore at sunset and look to the horizon. It appears to be an edge, a rim, a boundary line where ocean stops and sky begins. Sail toward it and you never arrive. The edge recedes because there never was an edge. It was a picture, not a principle. Or look from a valley to a mountain, and the sky seems to be sitting on the peaks, as if heaven were leaning on granite. Climb the mountain, and the sky has lifted. There was never any weight upon the rock. Picture, not law. Appearance, not truth. Is that right? Do you follow that? Now don't ever misunderstand what I am saying. I am not telling you to deny what your senses report. I am telling you not to grant it authority. The senses report. The mind accepts. Fear gives it continuity. And then we, in our great cleverness, treat the picture as a thing to battle. We organize against the horizon so we don't fall off. We design braces to hold up the sky. We lay out a strategy to pry rails apart. It is all very industrious and very foolish because the premise is wrong. There is no law, no cause, no substance, no divine edict behind that picture. It exists as a mental image, a suggestion, a hypnotic influence claiming to be what it is not. It is a voice saying, "I am law," when it has no law. It is a shadow saying, "I am substance," when it has no substance. Do you see that? How does the spell hold? By consent, by belief, by the quiet nod that says, "Yes, that's true," and then by the fear that rehearses it in the night hours. Every time you consult the picture for instruction, you renew the lease you never should have signed. Every time you argue with it, you confess its power by the seriousness of your engagement. And so you tire. You tire because you are wrestling a costume as if a man were inside it. All right, then change your assignment. You are not a warrior against a power. You are a witness to reality. Your work is discernment, training the inner ear to hear what is of God and what is not, training the inner eye to know form as presentation and never as separation. When a picture arises, your first question is not, "How do I fight?" but, "Where is the law of God here?" And if there is no law of God to sustain the claim, you have your answer. Picture, not principle. Stand there. Rest there. Bear witness there. In the infinite way, you have one power, and you never use it. You consent to it. You let it be is until the suggestion has no place to land in you. Now, if you treat pictures as powers, you will exhaust yourself. If you recognize pictures as pictures, the spell breaks. Just as walking breaks the horizon, just as climbing releases the sky, just as approaching proves the rails do not meet, spiritual discernment dissolves the claim by withdrawing your faith. As, is, am. Let that be the light by which you see, and the pictures will pass across your field without recruiting you into their army. Then peace, not a truce, not an armistice, peace, that is, will quietly announce itself. Do you see that? All right. Let us bring the light of Scripture to bear so that you can see how this whole picture was manufactured. Not to argue texts, but to use them as they were given. Allegory pointing to inner fact. In the very first chapter of Genesis, we are shown the true creation. God, infinite being, unfolding itself, And the refrain is one word: good, good, very good. Completion, wholeness, no opposite. Do you see that? That is creation as is. That is the universe of isness, God expressing as all that is. Now, right on the next page, you meet another account. Dustman, garden, serpent, a command and a breach, sweat of the brow, thorns, and exile. That is not a second creation of God. That is the human mind's story about itself, the birth of a separated sense. It is the manufactured world of I and God, good and evil, gain and loss. How was it engineered? By eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the acceptance of two powers, two laws, two realities. The moment you admit two, you have left is. You have introduced but. Yes, God, but. And with that, fear is born. Hiding is born. Striving is born. Oh, now I must earn my own living. Now I must protect my own life. And there begins the second false creation, the mental picture world in which appearances parade as laws. Don't ever misunderstand what I am saying. God did not change between chapter 1 and chapter 2. The change was in the lens. The fall is a change of viewpoint, not a change in God. Do you see that? Now the Master gives us another picture to make the same point. The prodigal. Here is the son, whole in the Father's house, and then a thought rises. Give me my portion. I will go off on my own. I, me, mine. Separate capital, private ability. He journeys into a far country, far not in miles but in sense, and he spends his living in riotous thought until famine comes. Famine must come to the separated sense because it has cut itself off from is. It has attempted to be am without as. It has tried to be identity without substance and presence. And then, at last, the turning. He came to himself. Mark that well. He did not come to a better farm, a kinder economy, a luckier break. He came to himself. He remembered who he was in the light of who the Father is. I will arise and go to my Father. Not, I will go get a job. I will go home to is. What happens? The Father had never moved. The house had never closed. The robe, the ring, the feast were not negotiated benefits. They were the natural atmosphere of home. The Son's am found its truth again in the Father's is. And the life of the Father flowed as the Son. There is your as. As, is, am. God as my being. God is. Therefore, I am. The whole drama of suffering begins and ends here. It begins with the belief, I am a part, and it ends with the realization, I am home in thee. So when you read those two chapters, remember, one is revelation of what is. The other is a parable of what seems. When you hear the prodigal, remember, the famine is the fruit of two-power belief. The feast is the fruit of remembrance. Return, and the pictures lose their jurisdiction. Abide in as/is/am, and the old but has no voice. Do you see that? Now let us take up the sacred matter of prayer. And I ask you to be very still inside, because this is where most of the world goes wrong. Prayer is not asking God to fix a picture. Prayer is not pleading with a reluctant deity to please do what love would have done in the first place. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. God is not withholding anything, and therefore, God can't give you anything. God is eising all the time. Infinity does not have a storehouse to open after you beg. If God is presence, then what you call supply, life, harmony, wisdom, are the very isness of God here. To ask God to give what God already is to confess you have accepted the picture as law and the but as authority. Do you see that? All right, then what is prayer? Communion. Not words trying to persuade, consciousness consenting to what is. It is the resting awareness, the felt recognition of God as presence, as life, as the only government right where the claim seems to be. You are not trying to bring God to a sick room. You are abiding in the realization that life is God, and God is here. You are not trying to import peace into a troubled home. You are abiding in the knowing that peace is the atmosphere of and is omnipresent. That is prayer. One power, and you never use it. You rest in it. You bear witness to it. You let it be what it is until the terrible, terrible but cannot find an ally in you. How do we do this practically? In our periods of meditation, we let the mind stop outlining. No more blueprints for God. No more do this, then that, and by Tuesday. Take no thought, the Master said. Be still and know that I am God. So sit, and when the urge to outline rises, notice it as the old hypnotism of two powers. Lay it down. Breathe. Let the inner ear listen for the gentle sense of presence. Don't grab at it. Don't force it. Consent to be still until there is a felt hush, a soft certitude that requires no argument. Sometimes a minute, sometimes 20. Wait until the heart whispers, I am. Then you know prayer has occurred, not because conditions reported change, but because peace announced itself. And peace is the sign of communion. Now here is your bridge when the mind is agitated by the news, by pain, by memory, when the but shouts. Do not argue with it. Place the triad before your thought like a lamp. As, is, am. God as this very life. God is here, now, only. Therefore I am, identity not apart from God, but God expressed as my being. Let those three words turn your face homeward. Whisper them. Let them empty the room of argument. As, is, am. Stay with them until you are no longer trying to make something true, but simply acknowledging truth that already is. Do you see that? Please remember, prayer does not change God, and it does not change a divine plan. Prayer changes the seer. It lifts the lens. And as the lens clears, the picture loses its jurisdiction. We want nothing of God but the joy of communion. We want the presence itself, and in that presence, the old but has no voice, no law, no power. Abide there, and let peace, not a future peace, not a bargained peace, peace that is, be your prayer's only proof. Now we come to the discipline without which none of this will amount to more than pleasant ideas. Mark this well, because this is going to be very, very important in your practice if you catch it. You will never go anywhere in this work if you start your treatment with any word other than God. Not the disease, not the bank account, not the memory. God. If you begin with the case, you have already granted it reality. If you begin with God, you anchor in reality and let appearance report if it must while you refuse it jurisdiction. Do you see that? Step 1. Drop the person and the problem as primary. I did not say neglect them humanly. I said drop them from the throne of your attention. If you carry poor so-and-so and their terrible condition into your treatment, you have enthroned the picture and are now asking God to come kneel before it. You cannot do it. Lay the person and the condition outside your thought. Wipe the slate. Emptiness first. Step 2. Establish God as the only presence, power, law. God is. Therefore, there is not another presence beside God. God is law. Therefore, there is not another law opposed to God. No law, no cause, no effect in the realm of discord. No contagion, no heredity, no accident as spiritual fact. No sin, no penalty, no separation in the kingdom of is. If God is infinite life, where would a law of death stand? If God is infinite mind, where would a law of confusion arise? It could not. There could be none, and there is none. State it, feel it, let it settle. As, is, am. Step 3. Recognize the claim as appearance, not substance, not law, not God-ordained fact. A picture, a suggestion, a hypnotic influence, seen, acknowledged as picture, and refused authority. Like the rails that seem to meet, it can shout, it can insist, it can frighten, but it cannot be a law because God is law. Withdraw your consent. Withdraw your fear. Do you see that? Step 4. Rest in realized truth. Not a strain, not a fight, not an argument, but consent to is. Be still and know. Let the inner hush announce itself. Let the heart whisper, I am. Rest there until peace, even a thread of it, makes the picture uninteresting. One power, and you never use it. You rest in it. You bear witness to it. You let is be is. Now, persistence. This is not a quick phrase repeated mechanically. This is a specific and conscious realization returned to again and again until consciousness yields. 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 or 3 times in the day if needed, quietly, faithfully, until something within says, it is finished, and the urgency to check the picture lets go. Some pictures break like mist. Some require that you stand and stand and stand. Accept your responsibility and go to work on that case every single day of the week until the spell lifts. Finally, a warning. Do not use as/is/am to prop up a personal self. It is not decoration for ego. It is the surrender of personal sense. You are not making me powerful. You are yielding me to the I that is God as identity. If you try to turn this into a tool for private advantage, you will be driven again into the far country of 2 powers. Begin with God. Continue with God. Conclude in God. And watch how the case, seen for what it is, a lawless appearance, loses voice, loses place, loses you. Do you see that? All right. Now let us take this key and turn it in the common locks you meet every day, so that this does not remain beautiful language, but becomes living practice. Mark this well. Every human problem is a variation of one premise: separation. Each claim says in its own dialect, I am apart from God, and therefore must be met, not with argument at the picture level, but with recognition. As, is, am. Do you see that? Fear first. What is fear? It is a forecast produced by the belief that there is a me over here and powers out there. Accident, opinion, economy, disease that can invade me. Fear is a prediction authored by separation. It says, but what if? And then hires imagination to paint the rails meeting. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. The body can tremble, the heart can race, but the author of that story is the claim of two powers. How do you meet it? You do not bargain with the picture. You return to being. God as my life. God is my safety. Therefore I am. Identity inseparable from presence, not a target to be defended. Sit with that until the sense of me out here dissolves into I that is God expressed. Fear loses oxygen because its premise is gone. Is that right? Do you see that? Lack next. Lack is the quiet assumption that supply lives outside, people, positions, markets, and may refuse to come when called. That is the prodigal arithmetic. I and my portion. Reverse it. God is substance. God as the very essence of supply. God as the activity of right unfolding. God as omnipresence, appearing as opportunity and support. Therefore, I am, never a beggar on the doorstep of life, but life expressing as sufficiency. Withdraw your worship from numbers and channels. They are forms, not sources. Mahogany as table, God as supply. As, is, am. Rest there until the form either aligns or becomes uninteresting. But your peace does not depend on it. Do you see that? Disease. The world parades laws, germs, infection, heredity, contagion, age. And then the terrible, terrible word but shouts, be realistic. Now listen, we are realistic about God. If God is life, where would a contrary law originate? On what statute book in infinity would you find permission for decay? You will never find it. Therefore, what confronts you is a picture with learned names, not a principle with divine authority. Deny no human care. Deny only the pretense that these claims are laws in God. Establish one law, life, wholeness, order, and let the picture meet that light. One power, and you never use it. You abide in it until the suggestion has no advocate in you. Do you follow that? Sin and guilt. We do not excuse wrongdoing. We refuse to accept it as identity. The act is the act. Responsibility is humanly met. But who are you? Not a fallen creature crawling toward God. God as your purity, as your integrity, as your love. I, of mine own self, can do nothing. When that is known, the urge to sin loses its glamour, and guilt loses its sentence, because the I that sinned was the counterfeit self of separation. Come to yourself and say, I am home in thee, and watch how restitution, amends, and renewal unfold as the Father's ring, robe, and feast. Do you see that? So then, fear, lack, disease, sin. One claim in 4 costumes. Separation speaking 4 accents. Therefore, one key. As, is, am. Use it. Stand in it. Return to it 2 or 3 times a day until the heart knows it before the mind says it. And when the but rises with headlines and symptoms and memories, do not argue. Recognize the picture, refuse it law, and rest in is. There peace announces itself, and the picture, having lost your faith, loses its place. Now we must face the loudest objection of all. And I want you to hear the tone of it, because it masquerades as wisdom. But, and here comes that terrible, terrible word, but look at the world. But earthquakes, but war, but oppression, but children hungry and leaders cruel. The collective but of headlines that would draft your faith into its army and make you confess two powers, God on Sunday, calamity on Monday. Do you see that? This is the great temptation. To look out upon the moving picture of human history and in the name of compassion enthrone it as reality with law. Don't ever misunderstand what I am saying. We do not ignore human suffering. We do not turn away from tears. In the realm of sense, tears are real to the one who weeps. What we refuse is the coronation, crowning discord as a principle, giving it law, letting it define God for us. We will not add our fear to the world's fear. We will not add our hatred to the world's hatred. We will not become hypnotists' assistants, holding the subject steady while the lie performs. Our task is different. Our task is discernment, to acknowledge the report, to feel humanly if feeling comes, and then to return to the only government, the only law, the only presence. God is. One power, and you never use it. You rest in it. Do you see that? Here is your consciousness assignment when injustice or disaster confronts you. First, be still inside. Even if you are standing in a crowd, a moment of inner stillness is possible. Second, return to the triad. As, is, am. God as presence, as government, as life right here. God is. Therefore, no second law may claim jurisdiction. Therefore, I am, not a frightened spectator, but the transparency through which peace may appear. Third, listen. Not for slogans, not for rage, but for the quiet directive of spirit. You may be led to speak a word, to write a letter, to cast a vote, to give a meal, to open your door. You may be led to silence. But it will not be panic. It will not be contagion of fear. It will be obedience. Right action is born of right seeing. Do you follow that? Now, compassion is our way. Hypnosis is not. Compassion lifts, blesses, acts as instrument while refusing to concede reality to evil. Hypnosis agrees with appearance, borrows its vocabulary, and then calls the borrowing realism. Compassion looks at the man with the withered hand and sees the Son of God. Hypnosis looks and says, permanent condition. Compassion may bind a wound, pass a law, or stand a vigil, but all of it without abandoning the allness of God. The wrath of man, the apostle taught, worketh not the righteousness of God. Anger can build barricades, it cannot build peace. Peace builds peace, because peace is. As you hold to as/is/am, quietly, without display, something happens that you cannot measure with headlines. Your very presence becomes leaven. A room settles when you enter, not because of personality, but because panic finds no echo in you. Meetings clarify. Tempers cool. Solutions that hid themselves behind fear step into view. You did not use power. You consented to presence. You did not win an argument. You withdrew your faith from the picture and gave it back to God. This is not passivity. It is purity of stance. And from that stance, feet and hands move rightly. So when the world shouts its butt, do not surrender your center. Take your sacred position, as, is, am. Stand there until the noise spends itself. Stand there until compassion, not hysteria, gives you your next step. And as you walk it, remember, there is not God and you. There is God as you. Therefore, the world cannot draft you into two-power thinking unless you volunteer. Stay home in is, and let that homing become the quiet miracle by which the world gains, without quite knowing why, a little more light. Do you see that? Now we come to sacred responsibility. And I want you to mark this well, because this is going to be very, very important if you catch it. Consciousness is not private property. It is not a sandbox for our experiments. A class is a sacred, sacred, sacred undertaking because every thought saturated with truth or fear goes out like fragrance or smoke. Therefore, we dare not tamper with another's being carelessly. We are dealing with identity, God as that one. So our practice must be reverent, precise, and obedient to principle. Don't ever misunderstand what I'm saying. This is not somberness. This is holiness. This is the joy of knowing that we are entrusted with a light that heals by revealing, not by manipulating. Do you see that? All right. Immediate application. If you see someone burdened, on the street, in your home, in a hospital, in a headline, do not pass by on the other side. Within yourself, quietly, without display, lift them. How? Not by describing a better picture, not by bargaining for tomorrow's report, but by recognizing God as their very being. Father, Thou art the life of this one. Thou art the wholeness, the dignity, the safety, the peace. Thou art. As, is, am. God as identity. God is the only law and presence here. Therefore, I am witnessing the I that God is as this very one. Stay there 1 minute, 2 minutes, until your heart softens and the picture loosens its grip in you. You did not use power, you consented to presence. You did not add words, you withdrew your faith from the appearance and gave it back to God. Do you see that? Now, practice frequency. Take a case, one person placed in your path, and work it every single day of the week until the inner resistance breaks and the recognition stands clear. Morning and evening if required. 2 or 3 short periods if the mind is noisy. Begin with God, always with God. Establish one law, one life, one presence. Recognize the claim as picture, not principle. Then rest and rest and rest in the eyes. Do not peep at results. Do not dig up the seed. Stand and stand until peace witnesses to your treatment. If you do not, sure as fate, you will drift back into two-power thinking and wonder why nothing moves. Accept your responsibility and go to work. Negative injunctions now, and I am going to be firm. Stop begging. God is not withholding anything, and therefore God cannot be persuaded. Stop outlining. The moment you draw the blueprint, you have announced that you know more than is. Stop fearing results. Fear is faith in a second law. Return to communion. Sit in the hush. Consent to presence. Let as/is/am reorient the lens until you can say, without strain, I know thee here. One power, and you never use it. You rest in it. You bear witness to it. Finally, close the loop. This is not personal power. This is not my spirituality fixing your problem. There is not God and you. There is God as you, and as the one before you. We are not improving a mortal. We are beholding the immortal. We are not arming a self. We are surrendering self to the I that is God. And in that surrender, the pictures lose law, lose voice, lose us. Take this as your assignment. Practice as/is/am daily. Lift quietly, faithfully, reverently, and watch how home in thee becomes home in all you behold. Do you see that? Now we come to the quiet place, where this is no longer a practice you remember, but a life you live. Mark this well, because it will save you years. The matured state is not a daily wrestling to get God to do something. It is the simple, steady awareness, I am home in thee. Not visiting, not applying under pressure, not running in for shelter when the storm starts and rushing out when the sun appears. Home. The sense of outside fades. The inner sentence that used to begin, "But what about?" loses its authority, and another sentence, without strain, speaks itself. God as my being. God is the only law. Therefore I am, whole, guided, maintained. Do you see that? All right. How does that look on Monday morning? In traffic, with a bill in the mail, a call from a friend in pain. It looks like a settled center you do not have to manufacture. You do not reach for the triad as if it lived out on the shelf. It rises from within as the very air of consciousness. As, is, am. God as the life I am beholding. God is the presence here. Therefore I am the transparency for peace, for wisdom, for right action. It is not drama, it is not display. The miracle is that nothing exceptional seems to happen, and yet everything proceeds under a different government. You find yourself saying less and listening more. You move less and accomplish more. You decide less and discern more. One power, and you never use it. You rest in it. You bear witness to it. Do you see that? Now, a word of encouragement for those who measure themselves by events. Sometimes the picture changes at once. Sometimes it thins like fog at dawn, imperceptibly until the hill stands clear. The true measure is not spectacle. It is the breaking of fear and the rise of peace. When fear drops you, even while the picture still argues, you are already in demonstration, because you have withdrawn your faith from a second power. Stay there. Do not peep at results. Let peace announce the governance of is, and the forms will either yield or become uninteresting. Either way, you are free. But, and here comes that terrible, terrible word, but be warned and be comforted. Do not turn this into a phrase to be parroted while the heart clings to separation. A phrase without realization is noise. Realization will make even a single word a key. If you find yourself repeating as/is/am as if you could bludgeon the picture with syllables, stop. Be still. Wait until the inner softness returns, until you can feel the truth rather than force it. Then the words open the door as a gentle knock, not as a battering ram. Don't ever misunderstand me. The phrase is holy when it is the echo of realized presence. Now, let us close as we must always close, by returning to communion. Lay aside your arguments. Lay aside your blueprints, Sit here a moment and do nothing. Let the mind grow quiet. Let the breath find its own rhythm. If you must say a word, let it be, Father, I am home in Thee. Then listen. Not to thought, but to presence. Let the sense of a second presence fade out until there is only I, God expressing as the life you are. Rest and rest and rest. And as you rise, do not leave this place. Walk from it. Take it to your table, your desk, your phone, your street. Home in Thee. The quiet miracle is that you discover it was never otherwise. Do you see that?